Welcome back to Biology 1620. Today we're going to talk about humans as part of a global ecosystem. And the fundamental concept associated with this lecture is that human health, our health, and our well-being are intimately connected with other species on this planet. And we share a common environment. Part 1. Yes, we as humans have impacted the planet. I know it's hard to believe for some, but yes, human activities have significantly impacted Earth. Remember when I started off the lectures so long ago, talking about the origins of life? I talked about the pale blue dot. That's us. That's us right here. This is a picture taken by Voyager as it left our solar system some 30 years ago. And the camera was turned around, not looking outward to space, but back to home, from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. Let's look a little closer at that blue dot. When we look at that blue dot, we now recognize that it is a planet largely covered with water, with continental masses, and white clouds as water circulates around the planet. But what have we done to this planet? I'm going to go through a bit of what we've done in terms of changes in the atmosphere and changes in the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere in just a single generation. I'm going to do that by showing 2 generations of L-ringers. This is me when I was 1 year old in my father's lap. I grew up quite a nerd, graduated from high school, married a lovely, smart woman, Edna L-ringer, and we had a child. That child grew up. His name is Josh, and Josh graduated from high school. He graduated from Judge. He also got married, and he also had a young child named Brixen. Brixen is now in the 3rd grade. So here we have 2 generations. What's happened to our atmosphere in just these 2 generations? Well, we can plot time on the x-axis and the CO2 concentration measured on the y-axis. And when we do that, we find that at the time I was born, when Josh's parents were born, the CO2 concentration was 315 parts per million. By the time I graduated from high school, the CO2 concentration had risen 5 ppm to 320. By the time I got married, it was up to 323. And by the time Josh was born, the CO2 concentration was 341. So we'd gone from 315 to 341 in a single generation. Well, Josh graduated from high school. He graduated from college. And he was married. And their son Brixen was born. And the CO2 concentration was then 399, some 58 parts per million higher. An exponential increase is apparent. So what's it going to be like in the future? The black circle is today. It's 415 ppm CO2 in 2020. What will it be like in 15 years when Brixen graduates from high school? Will it be 450? Will it be higher? Or will we bend the curve? That is, get energy, but from alternative sources that don't result in the evolution of carbon dioxide. We can bend this curve. And as a society, as a planet, as humans on this planet, we must bend this curve. Because the downside of not changing the curve is quite catastrophic. Catastrophic not in terms of the planet disappearing, but catastrophic in terms of disrupting our life and our normal schedule. Because what we see here over time is that as CO2 concentration increases, the planet gets warmer and warmer. This is the average temperature, not the individual site temperature. And what we see now with CO2 rising is an increase in CO2, just as has been predicted by every law in chemistry and physics. Since 1980, there's not been a single year which is below this long-term average. How can we bend this curve? Easy. It takes many small steps, and it takes us working together. We can think about renewable energy, wind and solar. We're already seeing that coal is being phased out. not because it's being outlawed, because it's not economical. We have as a transition fossil fuel, fracking, natural gas. Over time, we expect that to diminish because wind power and solar power is now cheaper than is the energy generated by fossil fuels. We bend the curve by having renewables. We bend the curve by eating lower on the food chain. And we bend the curve by thinking about alternative work systems where we don't have to drive to work as much. While I have focused so far on climate change and atmospheric changes, there are other global changes that are taking place as well. Most of these are driven by human activities. We're changing the land use and land cover as we expand agriculture. That results in biodiversity losses. That results in changes in the nitrogen cycles and pollution. And the global transportation systems have led to an increase in biological invasions. These are all things that revolve around issues that we've talked about in this class here, where we talk about the evolution and diversity of life. We advocate for a habitable planet. Everybody wants a habitable planet. We want to be able to thrive. And in today's talk, we're going to talk about sustaining ecosystem services, sustainable and thriving cities, and conservation, a truly American character. These three features help develop the concept of advocating for a habitable planet.